bienvenue, bienvenidos, willkommen to this second session of learning how to teach or deliver international languages in primary schools across Wales. My name is Katie Hillier and I'm currently seconded as the International Languages Schools Support Project Manager for South West Mid and West Wales, so the regions of Swansea, Carmarthenshire, Pembrokeshire, Ceredigion and Powys, based out of Swansea University on a Welsh Government project supporting practitioners in delivering languages across these regions. My usual role is I am subject leader for international languages at Pontarddulais Comprehensive School, and my email is there on the screen, so please do get in touch even after my secondment has ended, and I'll be more than happy to help you. So this session today is really all about learning Spanish, French or German in particular in primary school. As we saw in session 1, you can be delivering any international language in primary schools in Wales to meet the curriculum for Wales, but there are a lot more resources that are ready to use for non-specialists that meet Spanish, French and German in particular. And my specialties are these 3 languages, so I'll be today delivering this session based around these 3, but that's not to say you cannot deliver other languages in your context. So the session today, the aims we have are these 3 here. Really, it's all about building staff confidence in delivering and modelling really simple Spanish, French or German, depending on what you are teaching. So that you really are learning, the ideal really is that you're learning alongside your pupils. You're using resources that are already there, as the third aim demonstrates, ready to use resources, videos, websites and so on that have been designed for non-specialists to use, that you really are the model or using the video as the model and you're learning alongside the pupils, so that we can see how you can make your progression with your pupils to meet the relevant progression steps. If you are at the stage where you're not sure what the progression steps look like for international languages in primary school, you're not really sure what it says in the curriculum for Wales, please do see video 1. The QR code is here for it, or it's also linked on Hub. Please email me for the link. So in this session we went through understanding what it actually says about the progression steps for international languages in languages, literacy and communication, and so that staff hopefully through that were able to understand what that would look like in their context, which children needed to be learning what in order to meet progression step 2 and 3 in particular, but not necessarily what resources you could actually use, which is what this session is about. But through these 2 sessions then, we really are hoping that practitioners across Wales will feel more confident in understanding how they can deliver international languages even when they're not a speaker of a foreign language, because there are so many ready to use resources out there. So yes, if you are still needing to understand what it actually says in the progression steps, please do have a look at session 1 first of all. This session is really all about looking at what resources are out there and how you can use them. And why are we doing this? Well, in Wales we are having a focus now through the Welsh Government's Global Futures Plan in improving and promoting modern foreign languages across Wales. So the aims of Global Futures is really all about supporting teachers to improve their delivery of international language lessons so that their lessons are meaningful, really broaden teachers' skills and pupil skills in using international languages, so we can also really challenge the misconceptions around language learning as well. So please do get in touch with myself or many of the other Global Futures leads in your regions across Wales who can support you further. Please do get in touch with myself if you're not sure who you could speak to. So in the first session we broke down what it said in progression step 1, 2 and 3 about how pupils could learn languages in your context. This is the summary we looked at, and before we get into Spanish, maybe you have had some experience in understanding what this says, but you're still at the point, you might have already done this in the first session, but you're still at the point where you don't quite know how to bring it in. Now might be a good idea to pause this video and have a little look at what the progression steps actually say and think about these questions here either in Welsh or in English, are what you're currently doing in school that you can use, so that it's being embedded in a meaningful way that matches what you're doing. There's a breadth across your English, Welsh and foreign language provision, and ways to naturally begin to incorporate it before you look at the actual resources that are there, so it can be brought in a less isolated way and brought in a way that's holistic with your other languages. So have a pause, have a think, have a chat if you're doing this with others before we begin to look more at the specific resources. So in terms of overall picture and planning, again, we briefly talked about this in the first session, so I won't go into this in too much detail, but if you haven't seen it, what we don't want from this video is for you to have an impression that there's a certain amount of French, Spanish, German, whatever other language it is, you need to be learning, that it has to be done in a particular way. It's very much, there is no one size fits all. Ideally, as we looked at last session, you'll be bringing in a blended approach of looking at a specific language, like bringing in French Fridays or Fiesta Fridays for Spanish, something else for German in year 5 and 6 to meet progression step 3, less regular or shorter lessons, more songs in maybe in your years 2 to 3, depending on your structure of your school for progression step 2, but also not forgetting that multilingualism, bringing in your EAL pupils' languages, bringing in cultural content across the different AOLEs. So when we look at the resources today, do bear in mind how you might do this, which year groups you're going to bring it into, how are you going to think about bringing in EAL pupils' languages or other international cultural content into your lessons as well. And again, there is more resources and support CPD, as I mentioned last session, for this in the team, which I will show you later on in the session. So how to get started then with one of these particular languages? Well, I'm going to show you 3 curriculums for teaching, but there are many out there. There's so many resources now than previously for non-specialists, as I've said, for learning a language. But I'm going to show you 2 in detail, 2 specific ones for languages in detail, and then another one which is really great for supplementing with cultural content and meeting the languages connect us descriptions of learning. So I first want to show you something from Central South Consortium, who have a fantastic team of international languages leads there, where they have created a continuum of learning. So these can be accessed at these links. These links will be posted in this PowerPoint, which will be available on Hub alongside the video, or you can email myself for them, or Marina in Central South Consortia if you're in the same region. And so Central South Consortia created these continuums of language patterns for French, Spanish, British Sign Language, and there is currently one being finished for German as well. So you can use these even if you're not part of Central South Consortium. They've been very kindly shared out, and they align with their Welsh Consortium of language patterns as well. So the idea is that they have these full language patterns that show you how you can make progress with your pupils, but they are not aligned to particular progression steps in order for you to decide which ones would work best for your context. So I'm now going to show you how Central South use these and the ways you could use them in your context in a much briefer way, but when you click on these links through the PowerPoint, there is also a longer video showing you in a fantastic way how these can be used. So each of these, whichever language you choose, this is the Spanish example, they all have 6 communicative contexts, and under that in total there are 30 subcontexts, so 6 topics and 30 subtopics, as I said, aligned with the Welsh continuum. And all of the topics and language have been chosen based on what children would need to say or want to say. So it's really guided in how children would speak, what they want to talk about, what they might need to talk about in class. So it's much more that idea of using intrinsic motivation with the pupils in getting them to learn. And it builds, there's real concentration on depth of language knowledge, really getting pupils to have a really great depth of what they're learning rather than learning too much and not knowing it well. So they get the depth and build up to that wider breadth of language by having a spiral curriculum where items are continually revisited through retrieval practice. So here are the Welsh context and subcontext, and here the English. You can pause and take a little look further. In the actual continuum PowerPoints that you would get, each of these is hyperlinked, so you can jump into the topic that you are teaching or delivering, and it will then take you back home. So we're going to look at a couple of them, and it's up to you as the consortia suggests and how you align these with the progression steps. This is one example they provide of one school where they have decided to place the different communicative subcontext in this way in terms of progression step 1, 2 and 3. But you would need to think about the way your classes line up, whether you have mixed year 4, 5 classes, 6 classes and so on, how you might divide up the contexts. So for each of them, what you receive is a vocabulary grid with pictures or translations for the pupils to use, all in English, Welsh and the third international language. A sentence builder, which I'll show you an example of how you use these and what these are. There is always audio recorded by a native speaker, so you do not need to worry about modelling the language for yourself. If you're a non-specialist, a native speaker will be there, you press play and you can repeat after the recording with the pupils. You're learning with them. There's very often embedded videos as well, for examples of songs to help the children learn, and notes on grammar and pronunciation to support teachers as well as the lyrics in the notes section for the songs. So let's have a look at one example then. So we have here where you would introduce the greetings. As you can see, it's in Welsh, English and Spanish. This is where you'd press for the audio recording from the native speaker, and you'd click here, which would show you a video, which you would also watch in YouTube as well to help the children learn more. So the ways that you could use some of these, and again, the videos that are on the Central South database are much more detailed. This is a kind of just a brief overview, but you could use an example that Central South Consortia also teach of graded questioning. So first of all, we'd listen to the track, we'd play this, we'd listen and repeat. You might start to do some actions with it. So as you hear hola, make up an action for hola, make up an action for buenos dias, for good morning, so that then when we do the action, they might repeat it. I might say, replay the word, they do the action to show their understanding. So this lower level questioning. You could then move into a true or false, and once you are more familiar with the sentence patterns and the words, you model by saying something like, does hola mean good morning or hello? Or is hola good morning true or false? So you start to give them with yes or no's or either or's a way for you are modelling the word again and a way for them to show you they understand. You then bring in multiple choice there, perhaps bring in some other flashcard games. Is buenos dias good afternoon, good morning or good night? Give them multiple choice, try to hide the screen, can they remember? And again, that's where specifically here, which one independently they tell you what does adios mean. You've got the English and the Welsh covered up. They tell you after some practice what it means. There's lots of other ideas, and a lot of these go with Dr. Gianfranco Conti, who is a language sort of guru, with methodologies that are really research-driven in how you teach international languages. So do take some time to have a little look, pause the video on these, on some whole class activities, first of all, to build that modelling of the language so they really get familiar with the sentence patterns, the sounds, really hearing it, practicing it before they put it into action. And then there are some steps and some ideas for moving on where they're really developing more their comprehension through translation into English or Welsh, and then later on more into where they're producing it in translation into the target language. There's some great ideas that you can pause and look at. You'd more use some of these later on after you'd seen some more language components. So let's look at a few more. After you've done a couple of lessons on the greetings, you then might introduce the days of the week. And as you can see here, we've got the Welsh, English and Spanish again. It's a great chance to look at comparisons, make links between the words. And again, you can play lots of games with just this one slide. the I say, you say again. Often children love different types of repetition, like ghost repetition, where you say it quietly, they say it louder, or vice versa. Having delayed repetition as well is a great one, where you play the recording or you say it, then you count down from 5, ideally in the target language or in Welsh. They have to keep that word or that sentence later on in their head, and after you've counted down from 5, they say that. You can also do that with writing it on whiteboards when they're getting into writing it. You could say when things are in orders, like numbers, days of the week, months, you can say them in order and then deliberately miss one out or get the order wrong, different things like that. Then there are some other ideas with translation. Again, I say the Spanish, you say the English. Once they've heard the Spanish enough, you'll do the opposite. You might say the Welsh this time and they say the Spanish, or the English, they say the Spanish. Put the words in a random order, and can they put the order from memory? Can they reorder them, cut them up and put them on the table? They might put your hand up if you miss a day or a month, if you're looking at the months, and so on. So there's lots of different games you can play just with one slide. There's another example there of another subcontext from them, with again a song, the audio files of the words, and then they could see all the spellings. And this is where it's nice to start to look at things like etymology and things, and we'll look at that further in a moment. You might then introduce numbers after this, and there's so many different things you can do with numbers, so many different types of games and songs. You could do a Mexican wave around the class where they all go around and say the number. They always love to play bingo, where they could pick 6 numbers. They write the figures in those, and let's say you're just doing from 1 to 20 first of all. When you call out the Spanish, they cross it off. You could do some simple addition as well, of course. All sorts of different things you can do with numbers just from one slide. After a series of subcontexts, very often as it is a continuum, these language components build up until you are able to put them together in a sentence builder, where with a sentence builder, pupils would take one word from each box to build up a whole sentence. And items like this are great for looking at things like etymology and mythology, for example, with days of the week and months, and really getting the pupils to go and explore why there are links between some of them. Thinking back to days of the week, when you look at lunes, martes, we can think about dydd llun, dydd mawrth. Why do you think they're the same? Let's go research, let's find out. So there's great ways you can link into etymology here, which is part of progression step 3. And with something like this, with the sentence builders, I might start the sentence and they fill in the gaps. So I might say something like, if we're saying today is, and saying the day of the week, the full date, I might say hoy es martes. I might miss out the number, de marzo de 2026, and they have to tell me the number I missed out. I could give them options. Is today Tuesday or Monday? Hoy es martes or lunes, and so on. And can they then put some sentences together, test each other? Again, there's lots of different ways. If you look back to some of the previous slides with that list of tasks, and some later on as well, of all different ways you can use one slide to help the children with their learning. And again, it's all there embedded with the audio files. Later on then, as they get into more advanced language, there's some lovely language mats in the continuums as well, and there's all sorts of games you can play with just these language mats. Again, you can think back to the different graded questionings that we saw earlier, but also you can do different things like if they had it printed out, you could play the recording, or when you've got confidence, say yourself, have a pupil model it, first attach the picture that matches. Because they're numbered, again, you can play different number games with it. And you can play bingo, where I might say the sentence jugar a videojuegos, they have to hold up 7 fingers or write it on their whiteboard. And again, if you aren't a specialist, if you're not a speaker of Spanish, French, German, this is just a Spanish example. Once your pupils get excellent at it, you could ask them to give it a go and model it as they're getting to say it. Maybe you've got a Spanish speaker in your class, make the most of those experts. This is another example of a sentence builder. So once they've learnt these, as you can see from the previous photos, then they begin to put it in a sentence, taking something from each box. So I am going to go to the park, or I'm going to see my friends, whatever it is. And there's so many, again, different games you can play with this, different sentence builder type repeating games, translations. You can act them out. They could play charades, so a pupil could come up and act out playing football. First hand up to say, voy a jugar al fútbol. So many activities you can do with whiteboards as well. You can make deliberate mistakes. So some things from Dr. Conti's work is making mistakes and having pupils identify them. So you're modelling the sentence structures. So I might say the same sentence twice correctly and then make a mistake. So I might say something like, voy a jugar al tenis. Voy a jugar al tenis. So I've modelled the correct sentence for them, and then I might repeat it wrong. Voy a jugar al tenis. First hand up to tell me, or you could split them into the class in half, and first hand up to tell me where I said the mistake. Gets a point for their team. They could write it on their whiteboards. I could make a mistake in my translation as well. I could say something like, I'm going to say, I'm going to see my grandparents, and then I will say, voy a ver a mis amigos. Which word have I said wrong? So there's all sorts of games you can play, and if you Google like Gianfranco Conti or Conti EPI activities, there's so many more there. And also in the folder I will show you later on, there is more support for how you use activities like this, as well as in the Central-South Continuum as well. Here are some examples further from the Central-South Continuum of different things you can use to support you in knowing how to use these different continuum, the different subcontexts. So when you're introducing vocabulary, these are the kind of strategies you might use. When you then are trying to model the language, model the full sentences, the pupils practicing it, and then the pupils applying it. So if you were to Google any of these with, language game or learning languages, it will come up with a description of how you use these different strategies. So I'm going to show you another sort of area of resources for you. Not because that one isn't great, it's fantastic, but if you were finding you needed something different depending on your type of learner, if you as a non-specialist perhaps wanted some more videos to support you, or you needed more activities ready-made to support what you're learning with the Central-South Consortium, the Lightbulb Languages website is another great free resource website where they have full schemes of work and lessons for lots of different languages, and whether you're a specialist or a non-specialist, that's often split as well. So I'll show you an example again with Spanish, but they do also have, as you can see, this is the primary section of their website, and they have an awful lot of resources there. In the Teams area I'm going to show you, or you might already be part of it from session 1, you will see that I have saved support for the Central-South full scheme of work and resources here, but also the Lightbulb languages. I have taken the Spanish scheme and saved it into, if you were just doing a 2-year course of pupils, the suggested topics you could use, but a 4-year course is all saved in one folder as well. There's a lot more on the website, but to save you time, I put it all in one place, and mainly the things I think would be most useful in primary rather than looking at too much for you. So their 4-year overview looks like this, but on the website as well, these are all clickable links will take you to other areas that might help you. And you might realise that actually it's too much for our school to go from year 3 to 6 doing this. We're going to just spread the first 3 years across years 2 to 6 or years 3 to 6, whatever suits your context. They've got lots of examples of schemes of work overview if you need help with planning, but I won't go into detail there, there's plenty of those on their website. So within the team then, what I've saved, and you will see that there are the different years, and when you click into each year, so for example, into first year, there's several topics. Within each topic, you will see links to videos. There's different PowerPoints you can use and plenty of different extra worksheets and activities. So the videos are very much designed to be played with pupils as a lesson, and you are just learning alongside them. They're absolutely fantastic and could really help to supplement with the Central South Consortium areas as well. So here's an example. If you were looking at saying hello and saying how you feel, this first video here, as you can see, it's only about 3 minutes long. So it's very nice and short. It's not too much you're trying to squeeze into your lesson. And after it, you could then supplement it with some other things I'll show you shortly. During the lesson, there's a teacher as part of the video where she is demonstrating the language, she models the language, goes through some activities. So the pupils are very much learning with her. She leaves space for them to pause back. So she is the teacher and you are one of the pupils with the pupils. But if you wanted to use the two together, I think it's a great way to really help you, because not only do you get increased variation of activities, so that might help reduce monotony instead of still using the same light bulb language video over and over again. You could use the Central South one resources to really help you in the videos that are embedded in there. And that wider variety of activities not only then will reduce your workload, but can also be used to help the idea of spaced retrieval practice, coming back to the same language repeatedly so that they're really developing a real deep quality of how much they know, rather than focusing on trying to learn too many topics. So this is just an example of how you might use the two combined together. For example, topic 1, you might decide in the first lesson to use the video from light bulb languages, the one I just showed the screenshots of, the 3-minute video. They could do a little bit of repetition after it. The next week then, you might repeat that video, so they're having the modelling again, and then add in a song from YouTube, so they get to hear a song in the native language of the country, and they get to experience the vocabulary they're learning in a song context. Third lesson in, you might then also expand what they've seen in the light bulb video with the vocabulary from the Central South greeting lesson, because there's more, so you might add on what they've been familiar with in the first 2 lessons, maybe do a bit of retrieval with a greetings retrieval PowerPoint to recap what they've done in the first 2 lessons, and build on it then with the Central South greeting lesson. The 4th lesson then could be perhaps using that Central South resource greeting lesson again, because there's so many different no or low prep games you could do, followed by a worksheet maybe from the light bulb folder. Again, there are so many different ways you could use both, and you don't have to use both, but I want to give some options so that you use what really works for your context. So as I said about the light bulb things, everything for Spanish is saved in that Spanish folder I've been showing you. The French is not all saved in the team because it depends on whether you are going with a non-specialist or specialist. And there is also another full scheme of work for French saved in the team, which was one that was created by my comprehensive and our cluster primaries. So that's also there you can have a look at. And there are lots of resources as well on the website for German. What I want to show you next then is how you can supplement that with cultural content as well. It's so important when we think about the languages connect us, descriptions learn in particular, how we are making sure we look at the culture of different countries, and in particular in the culture of the countries where the language we're studying is spoken. There's something that's been created to help teachers straight away with this, and it's a toolkit that was created by Roots into Languages. The toolkit is fully bilingual, and within the Microsoft Teams I'm talking about, there's a English section and Cymraeg section. So depending on which school you're in, you can go into either folder, and it's all being created for either French, Spanish or German. And each of these, the toolkits then have knowledge organisers, which I'll show you in a moment, and PowerPoint lessons for you to follow with your pupils. There's also a learner portfolio you could print out that the pupils could use, and a very big practitioner guide which shows you how to use it. But really, you could just jump straight in and use the slides. So there's 6 different topics, and throughout it what you're doing is going through with a language superhero, one for Welsh, Spanish, German and French. And the idea is that pupils are being language detectives, working with this language detectives to solve language mysteries and to really learn about what languages are, how it fits other cultures, really meeting. It's been specifically designed to help to meet the progression steps within Languages Connect Us. So these are the 6 different topics. This is the Spanish version. So there's lots in there. In the first one, all about what is a language and how does it link to identity, then how they introduce themselves in a language, looking at art and culture in Wales and the country of the language, sport and well-being, then talking about food, and then festivals. Again, throughout the whole thing, it is linked to Wales and the country of the language. This is just an example of how it shows how it links to the different What Matters statements. So this is topic 5 and all the different cross-cutting themes that are there. So it's really meeting the different progression steps in the new curriculum. And as I said, the practitioner guide is very detailed. There's so much information there. And one of the great things that's there is how it links to different areas of learning like humanities, expressive arts, how you could bring language out of your Spanish lesson, out of your French lesson, whatever it is, and into a different area of learning to give it context. As I mentioned, there's loads of links to Wales, so there's always looking in this food lesson, for example, links to what not just looking at the Spanish versions or the French versions, but this is looking at typical dishes from Wales and looking at how it links to our identity, making comparisons to Spain and South America in the Spanish context. And within this as well, there's so many links, as I mentioned, cross-curricularly. So, for example, here just looking at history and geography and how food travels. There's loads of different ways as well then that you could expand on what you've been learning in a Spanish lesson. If they've been learning food or if they've been learning numbers, you could then use the Roots into Languages toolkit to expand on this and do all sorts of other activities that link to other areas of learning. They're also very easily adaptable resources. This is a cafe example where they're trying to find out the words using a dictionary, but if you didn't have dictionaries, you could turn it into this is where the French version was turned into a matching up card activity, and then you could create different things that again could be used later on for spaced retrieval. Another thing it supports with the new curriculum is in progression step 3, where it talks about etymology. So there's a lot of links to how languages have changed or borrowed words and how languages connect. So this is an example of, in the food topic, different borrowed words from other languages that are in Spanish or English and that are related to other languages. And then, as I mentioned, each topic has a knowledge organiser, so a double-sided sheet of all the vocabulary that they're learning in that topic, and these could be used to support your less able pupils, so they always have that support there in front of them. It can be used to make triple literacy references, looking at the English, the Welsh, the Spanish, making comparisons. It could be used for your more ambitious learners, pushing them to become more ambitious by getting them to use vocabulary across the knowledge organiser they might not have yet learnt, and give things a try. Another great resource for supporting with embedding cultural content is a brilliant series of 8 topics created by the MFL mentoring scheme. So if you go onto the MFL mentoring website, you'll easily find these in the primary section. They're all again bilingual, English and Welsh, and they don't just make references to one language like Spain or French, or one country, Spain or France or Germany. They talk very much about so many different cultures and items and festivals and things internationally. So for example, if you were looking at the lunches around the world one, which is a really fascinating one for primary children, you could use the full lesson plan there that's in there, the huge PowerPoints created to support teachers, or you could just jump into one of the different sections. So if you wanted to look, for example, at Japanese school lunch, you could jump in there. You could look at the different comparisons around the world first, and then zoom in on what it says about Japanese. There's so many different interesting things to bring in. So if they were looking at food in Spain or in Spanish, you could then supplement with some cultural content from these PowerPoints. Finally then, a few more sections of things I want to show you that are out there or support. When we think about literature in the new curriculum, it's talking about songs, rhymes, stories and poems, and there is so much you can use with music and song in terms of supporting with languages. It really does help pupils to really learn patterns and sentence patterns and vocabulary really easily when it's to a tune. And there is a brilliant resource that's been created by Ieithoedd, where they have got in multiple languages. This is just the Spanish example again. They have French, they have German, where they have created resources using rhyme and rhythm and repetition to help children learn a variety of different vocabulary from different topics. So each of the songs is in Welsh, English, and the third language. And on the website, you'll find 5 topics with 33 different activities. So there's so much there for supporting you. And one of the fantastic ones in particular to do with Spanish is the Patagonia project, because of the brilliant links there with Welsh as well. So if you were looking at greetings, you could use the songs from here with your Central South Consortium lessons, with a light bulb video. There's so many different things out there to really enrich your curriculum and the variety you're providing your pupils. There's also so much on YouTube as well. Within the Teams folder, there is a playlist, for example, for Spanish that I created of different songs where I've tried to find a song more for foundation phase learners and then one for your older learners for each different topic, so that you've got different songs they can use that will suit their age or their interests. And there are lots of different ones saved within that PowerPoint playlist, but of course there are so many more online that you can find on YouTube. Then in terms of, if we continue with literature, with stories and poems, then within the team that you will have access to shortly in this PowerPoint, there are some specific CPD sessions on using books, music and drama that you will find potentially helpful in developing further how you use stories and poems, music and so on with your primary learners. But one great place to start from is simply by searching YouTube for native speakers reading books. And this is a Spanish example. There's some French and other examples in the folder as well in those lessons. And it might even match a book that you're doing in primary, or a book that they will know very well. And there's also some great multilingual book websites out there as well. So there's World Stories that have so many books in different languages that you could use to support your EAL learners and with their reading of their home language at home, as well as bringing in a book from a different country into the lessons, in your Spanish lessons or French lessons and so on, which helps meet the different progression steps for progression step 2 and for progression step 3 in terms of literature. There's some more examples there of some Spanish, and there's also a great company called Empathy Lab that are really supporting schools in finding books that show different cultures, different diversities, and helping pupils be more empathetic towards differences. So if you're looking for a particular book that demonstrates a particular culture, then Empathy Lab might be able to point you in the right direction. This is an example again kindly shared by Central South Consortia of a school that decided to use a different book in each term in years 1 and 2 to really help to bring in different cultures, but also bring in different language as a way to model language to pupils. So there were a few books there that were translations of books that pupils might have been familiar with in English, but then some also original Spanish books as well. One final area I want to show you, you might have had enough already, might have enough resources there, but there are also some paid subscription websites out there. I know some schools that use Language Angels fantastically, and there's this one here called Power Languages. If you have money within your budget, you might find it useful to use one of these subscriptions that all staff can access and you can follow together. This one by Power Languages was actually created in Scotland first, and all Scottish schools, when they brought in international languages, used Power Language across their schools, and it was mapped to the Scottish curriculum, and it's now been mapped to the Welsh curriculum. I've got some free samples from the website that are in the Teams folder that you can have a little look at, but the key points about it is that it's £100 per year per school. The curriculum there they have is from years 3 to 6. It's very much cross-curricular. I'll show you some examples, but as you can see, here are some from the website where they bring French into looking at space and dinosaurs and Egyptians and so on. And it's very much the idea that the teachers are learning with the students. You don't need to be 1 week ahead. You do not need to be a specialist. Again, like with the Central South Consortium, all the audio files are included, and it could be that if you are following it as a cluster, if you decide to buy into it as a cluster, you could all follow it in the same way to reach your 7 at the same point. The website has been very much designed that it doesn't matter how much prior knowledge they've had, it will really point you into the right specific section. So if you've got a year 4 class who've got no language, this is the section you go to. It will show you. If you've got a year 4 class who have 1 year's experience, this is the section you go to. So it's very much age specific and prior knowledge specific. They've also got different resources on there to use around the school, like labels, so you'd have multilingual classroom signage. Their description of what's in each lesson is nice and simple, so it's not too much reading for teachers ahead of time. And the lessons themselves are nice and simple as well. There's not too much there. It's nice and clear for pupils. This is a cat, un gatto, and you play the audio file. Within each PowerPoint section, there's clear links to what's in each PowerPoint page and what's there and what you can use as a teacher. And there's also embedded content in lots of the lessons that links to culture of the country as well, which is so important. So for an example of a tradition here around Easter. As I mentioned, they have some great cross-curricular ideas as well. So you could have a look at those free examples to give you some ideas no matter what curriculum you decide to use. They've got one example here where you could either use it where there's a video about Tutankhamun and they use that video to practice introducing themselves before they've learnt the words in French, or they learn the words in French or German or Spanish first, and then when they start learning about Egyptians, they could then introduce themselves as Tutankhamun in French. So you can either way around, and you could do this in so many other topics, that once you've learnt certain vocabulary, they could bring that into a topic. If they've learnt food, if they've learnt weather, you could bring it into a different topic and use it as part of your lesson. And this is, again, from Central South Consortium. They make this reference as well to how it's so important to put the Spanish, the French, whatever it is you're learning, into context, so they don't just learn it in, and we talked about this in session 1 as well. They're not just learning it in a language, it's very much as the curriculum for Wales wants it to be, that we're blending English, Welsh, the international language across different AOLEs, across different contexts, so that it gives the language meaning and purpose and they can use it outside of the language lesson context. So everything I've referenced today has all been saved in a team for the Southwest and Midwest Wales region, but anyone across Wales is welcome to use these resources and access them and everything else that's in there. So this hyperlink will take you there, or alternatively you can email myself for access, and the description will be in with this as well on Hub. The link will be there. So this is what the team looks like. When you go into it, there is a secondary and primary section. So you go into the primary international languages section, and when you click on shared, then you'll come up with, this is where all the language teaching resources are saved. There's lots of different support details, so to different global future stakeholders who help with international languages, as well as different continued professional development, as I mentioned. The different CPD, different support is also there, where we in Swansea held a full day link similar to what we've been looking at in this session and session 1, but we went in further detail. So there's more there that can help you if you need it. There's also a full resource list that the start of it looks a bit like this. So if you're looking for anything on any language, general multilingualism, there's some bits about Arabic, Italian, there's lots of links in there. And in the resources section, everything has been separated into the different languages. So everything I've talked about today is separated into these different sections in the team. So if you're thinking that you're ready to get started and you're going to go and have a look at which resources to use, I shared this in the last session, so I'll just leave it there, just some ideas of, if you know what language you're going for, how you might launch it. So please go back and look at session 1 as well for some extra ideas there. And just to finish as well, then we looked at this in session 1 over where am I going next. It's so important that we think about where are our pupils at now with their learning, where are we at as a school, and what are the next steps. So I'll just put this here as a reminder for those who were part of or have watched session 1. Please do go back as we went into this in more detail, but just where you might take your next steps. Perhaps now using the resources here today, you might begin to teach languages with 1 year group to get started, and that those language lessons will be taught just in isolation, which is absolutely fantastic. And hopefully then you'll be able to move on maybe next year as it gets planned into school development plans, whichever structure works for you. You might start to look at where it'll be taught across the different progression steps, as well as then across the different AOLEs to take languages out of just those specific language lessons and into different contexts. So please do have a look at session 1 for more details about this as well. So diolch yn fawr iawn, merci, gracias, danke, thank you so much for listening and being part of this session. Please do get in touch if I can help in any way further in embedding international languages in your context, or if I can answer any questions. So yes, thank you so much.